Good afternoon, and welcome to episode 12, season 2 of Sipping Tea with Stacy T. I'm your girl, Stacy. Hopefully, you're doing well. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful Saturday. Sorry about the lateness. For some reason, it would not let me into my account, but I got here. If that's not anything more than we're used to, I mean, come on. We've been through some things, right? For those of you who have been with me for a while. So again, happy Saturday. March is almost over. Crazy, crazy, crazy. I can't believe we're through a quarter of the year already. We just got into 2026. How is this possible? But it is. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I think is very important, something that I myself am managing. And hey, girl, how you doing? Something myself that I'm managing because, life does a lot when you're going through a variety of situations or you're going through different phases of your life. You're going to come through periods of separation. And it's important to figure out how to process that. So, we're going to talk about this. I actually spoke about it a bit yesterday when I was on my TikTok live. And I think it's a topic that I want to bring here. We're going to be talking about it from this book that my mom got for me. It's called How to Heal a Broken Heart, because she knew your girl was going through, right? So, y'all, I've already told you, she got me all the books. She got me all the books, and I appreciate it um, because, when you're going through a variety of situations, you can apply your own logic to it. You can apply, people's opinions and thoughts to it, because that's also a thing, right? People will all have their own feelings about what you're managing or how they got through a situation that may be similar. But also, what you may need to do is beyond apply the word of God to it, apply just sound wisdom to a situation. And as I look through this book, and so again, this is the book right here. It's How to Heal Your Broken Heart, A Woman's Guide to Thriving After a Breakup by Sylvia Connor. I hadn't heard of her. Why? Because y'all, I avoided self-help books like the plague. I was like, who needs this? Like but I didn't know that I was gonna need it. Right. And one of the things that I think is really important is as you're going through your breakup to apply things to patterns, not just to that particular moment, but through patterns that you've adopted throughout your life. And the breakup for me has 100% exposed patterns. It's exposed patterns of behavior. But before we get into that, we're going to be having, because this is kind of a tough subject, we're going to be having a familiar tea with my favorite honey. And if you've been on here, you already know. So we're going to have this Revolution Spanish white peach ginger tea because I love it. That's why. I just told y'all. That's why I'm doing it. Oh my goodness. Y'all, I need to order more of this because I think I'm only on a few bags left. It's a critical situation at this point. And as you know, this Olivares honey company, creamed honey, my favorite of the pack. Again, there's a lot of different options, and none of the options in there are bad, by the way. I want that to be clear. This just happens to be my favorite of the bunch. So I'm going to apply. Well, actually, let me put some of the hot water in there first. That would make sense, Stacy. That would make the most sense. So let me get some of that out of this, and then we're going to get started. We're going to get chatting. One of the things that I also wanted to share with you all is I am looking at ways where I can make this more interactive. So you're not just listening to me drone. You're able to, right now, obviously, you're able to chat with me through the chat feature. But I would love for there to be an option where you can actually talk to me real time. So that's something that I'm looking into. That is something I'm looking into. So we shall see. We shall see. Obviously, when I'm doing this on TikTok, there's a way that people can speak to me. I can open up a panel and do that. This does not have that functionality. So we're going to work on it. We're going to work on it. Well, we shall see. We shall see. Let me put some of this honey in there so I can get that in there. Trying to get it off the... come on. Come on. All right. There we go. Got some of that in there. I don't need much with that, y'all, because I love that tea, as I've mentioned to you before. All right, so hopefully everybody's had. Hey, Kathy, how you doing? Hope you had a good week, everyone. Let me get myself comfortable. I got to get myself situated, y'all. All right. So now we're here. Now we're situated. Or at least I'm situated. Hopefully you all are comfortable. What I will say, when I was talking about this and I was looking through this book, because as again, I've mentioned, I have a few, right? So I was looking through this book, and for those of you who just came in, the title of the book is How to Heal Your Broken Heart. And I think often when people think of broken heart, they automatically go to like a romantic relationship, which obviously it does make sense. If you've been in a relationship where you gave your all and it didn't pan out, it is heartbreaking. It is, challenging. Now, I'm also going to say there are some relationships that I ended, there was no heartbreak, right? There was zero heartbreak. And it's not because the person wasn't a good person. It just was like, this isn't working out. And we were cool. We were able to still, have conversation after and be like, okay, this didn't work out. The nature of how my relationship ended and the nature of how much I had put into it. And I think for anybody, that's what really leads to your feeling like a heartbreak has occurred. I think that many of us have had relationships that were like, okay, well, it was a cool person. We spent time together. I enjoy the memories that we made. We're just not aligned to move forward. That's very different. That is not, for me, that has not been heartbreak. But this one was absolutely different because I had so many thoughts and plans and all that, right? So again, it felt different. The experience was different, but we're still here. Right? This is where we are. This is where we're landed. How do we move forward? There's lots of things I've done to move forward, but this is really about how do you not fall into these really easy pitfalls that happen because you're going through the emotion of a breakup. So I love it. It says common pitfalls, the do's and don'ts, mostly the don'ts, y'all, of early breakup days. Because when it's first happening to you, you're dealing, well, I was dealing with the emotion of it. And it was like really quick, that like the emotional sprint that I went through. The first was the gut punch, right? Was like, what the heck just happened to me, right? So that was the first thing. Then the next feeling or the next thing that I was going through or managing was a feeling of shock and hurt, right? Like, how did this happen? How did we get here? Then there was anger. God heard a lot of the anger. God heard a lot of the anger. And I'm sure he was like, I didn't do it. But it felt like, if I'm going to be honest, and I feel like a lot of people are not honest about how they feel, I definitely was like, God, you could have avoided this. We could have avoided this whole thing. This was 4 years. You could have, year one, you didn't think maybe I should yank her real quick now. So there's definitely me having conversation with God about it. And I don't hide that. I think the problem is just too many people do hide that. Too many people are like, oh, you should never have a conversation with God like that, blah, 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 blah. Y'all, great for you. If that's how you want to handle it, that's wonderful. Do your thing. Not mad at you. But that's not how I function. That's not how my relationship with God is set up at all. And so if I have a question, I'm going to ask a question, point blank, period. So God and I had lots of conversations. It was kind of one way in that I was screaming and he was absorbing it. But again, and I've said this, when I did have the conversation with God, the word betrayal is the word that kept sticking out of my head. And it is the play that I'm going to be writing. But in addition to that, what God said to me, which kind of echoed something I'd heard him say to somebody else, was, because I said to him, I'm like, God, how did you allow for this to happen? And how did you allow for me to get to this place? And why? Why? What is it that I did that you felt like something that I told you, which was at the very beginning, like, God, I can't go through this emotionally again, this level of heartbreak. I don't want to go into a dark place or a dark season. And he listened to me, listened to me say what I needed to say, listened to me get off my chest what I needed to get off my chest. But he literally said to me that he gets betrayed every single day. And I was just like, huh? And he was like, even, and when you think about it, right, And he said this part as well, is my biggest betrayal led to Calvary. So without me being betrayed, you don't get Calvary, right? You don't get me being set up to take the fall for something I never did. You don't get that. And so I was just like, wow. And it was funny because, I've heard other people go through experiences where God is, rough with them like that. Cause that felt rough, y'all. I'm not going to lie. I felt like, man, I'm trying to come to you. You're being like, well, I do too. Like I get betrayed too. I got every day. So imagine, yes, this was a very painful experience. I don't minimize how I've managed it or how it's impacted my life. But at the same turn, think about being in a position where you've created all of this, and every single day people betray you. They either deny that you even exist, they don't spend any real time with you, they only come to you when they need, very toxic, right? Only come to you when they need something. That's the nature of how many of us conduct ourselves with God, right? So yeah, he told me that, y'all. Hopefully he'll be a little bit more gentle with y'all than I felt in that moment, because I was literally like, I just sat there with my mouth open and I was still mad, but then it just started to fade because I was like, okay, well, was I in the moment like, thank you, God, for feeling like I could handle this betrayal? No, I was not like that. I was mad, right? And there are still moments where I get upset, or I have this feeling of, I won't call it anger anymore, but every once in a while I have this feeling of like being frustrated, or feeling upset or hurt. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, that I dedicated years of my life and can't get them back. I cannot get them back. Years of a timeline that I had shared with God that I will never be able to get that time back. And so that frustrates me sometimes. That makes me angry sometimes. That makes me, sit in a space of, God, like, where was this sense of care for me? And I'm not saying, y'all, I'm being honest, and I'm being very clear that I know God cares for me, right? I know he does. But the feeling in that moment is as a daughter who didn't feel protected by her father. Like that's the honest to God, pun intended, feeling that I was feeling, right? And until we are honest with how we feel in the moment, and until we're honest with how we feel through what we're enduring, we're just going to continue to, be in this kind of weird space. I have to be honest with God. He already knows, y'all. He already knows that I felt like that. He knows that I felt abandoned by him in that time, because I'm like, there's no reason why I should have had to go through this type of experience again at my age. But again, he has a plan. We don't know what it is. I don't understand what it is. And like I've told you guys a million times, what is my saying? God, I don't understand it. I don't like it, but I trust you. And so I have to lean on the last part, which is trusting him with all my heart and not leaning to my own understanding, because my own understanding, don't get it. I don't get it. Your girl is lost on that one. So when I came to this book and it says, what are the common pitfalls, which are the don'ts of an early breakup? I loved what it said. So the first one says, don't drunk dial or text your ex. Right now, for those of you that drinking, you're like, okay, Stacey, that would never happen. I don't drink. I don't use anything that would it doesn't have to be about literally drinking. It could be about doing anything where you're getting into your head, right? It could be about you sitting before a pint of ice cream, your favorite ice cream, and just eating and thinking and reminiscing. And now you're missing him, y'all, or her, for those of you who are watching, right, that are men. What I will say is this, in those moments where you start to go down the alley of your relationship, right? You're going down all the things and you're reminiscing about, the things. What I will tell you is your brain is a funny thing, because when you are in a dark place, or when you're in a lonely place, or when you're in a space where you feel, disregarded or left, or all those things, right? What happens is you start to create a reality that is not truly your reality. You start to do that. And when you're starting to do that and you're starting to create a reality that is not truly your reality, the choices that you make are a little bit distorted. I can tell you that there are 100%. I look back at some of my relationships that I've been a part of, right? I've looked back at those relationships. I've looked back and I've said, my goodness, I do not have what's the problem? What? There's nothing on my forehead. Like, am I not blended, y'all? What is going on? Is there something here? I'm getting some of my production team is telling me that there's something going on. I don't see anything here, but if y'all, again, there's shadowing, so y'all have to let me know. Let me know what's going on, right? The shadows have me here. I looked in my mirror beforehand. If you see me up close, there's nothing here. It's probably because of where I'm sitting that it looks like there's something on my forehead. But that shout out to my production team for keeping me on point. All right. So what, like I was saying, when you're in a space, right, where you may be in, you're like really feeling maybe alone or lonely, and that happens, right? I want people to be very clear. When you're on your healing journey, every day is not sunshine and lollipops. There are going to be days that you think back to, man, I felt like I had it all. Or there may be days that you sit in a space and you're like, man, I miss my friend. Because breakups, by the way, are not just for, the person that you were in a relationship with, like you were dating or married to even. They literally can happen in the context of friends, right? You had friends for a long time and now they don't speak to you anymore. They don't call you anymore. You've heard they were talking behind your back about you, all the things, right? That happens. And so in the matter of just living life, sometimes that's a thing too, right? That's a thing that we are managing. We're managing all sorts of disconnections, all sorts of separations. And how do you actually manage it? Are you able to disconnect with in a healthy way? We don't learn that, right? We don't learn that. And we also don't give ourselves time to fully mourn the disconnection. People will literally like stop talking to a friend that they've had for a gazillion years and then go about their business like nothing is happening. Y'all, that's a real thing. That's a real pain point, right? You really are going through this space and you miss your friend, you miss the bond, you miss the sisterhood or the brotherhood, or just, the person that was your confidant, the person you could rely on to vent or would give you wisdom and would hold you, I mean, mentally, physically, when you needed to be held, would encourage you. That's a lot to lose. All those things that I just listed off, right? That's a lot to lose. And so now you're in these things and you're still trying to manage and you're still trying to, go about your business and still show up every day for all the other people that are still in. But there are some days that that person who was that particular, that suited that need, that filled that gap in your life, in your heart, in your head, is no longer there. You have to mourn that. You have to mourn that. And people don't, well, society doesn't really give space for that, if I'm going to be honest, right? They don't really give full space for that. They give like, well, life happens. You can't, the people, and this is the thing also, people will, throw the word at it. People in your life for a season, Stacy. Yes. And guess what? That season meant a lot to me. And now the disconnection of them from following season or further seasons, I'm feeling that, right? I'm feeling that disconnection. I'm saddened by the fact that I'm disconnected from that person. Guess what? That's okay. And it's normal. And it's normal. Agent said there's nothing there. Okay, thank you. You're on top of it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Let me know, y'all. Y'all keep me on point. Keep me on point. So it's really important. It's important for us to remember that somebody else's healing journey is not going to be yours. If you need to sit in a space of reflecting, that's good, because that's part of the healing journey. As I said to you before, don't move in there, right? Don't set up an address, don't connect your Wi-Fi to that location, right? You don't need to be sitting forever in that space, but you do need to experience it. You do need to reflect back on some things, if for nothing else, to acknowledge your feelings and to identify patterns. Both of those things are grossly important to having a healthy adult life and healthy relationships in the future. So you're sitting there eating your ice cream or whatever it is that you like to do to calm yourself. If it's not eating, maybe you're shopping a lot, right? You're spending all the things. Amazon knows you by name because they're like, oh, hey, how you doing? Going through a rough week, right? because there's 10, 15 boxes coming to the house, that type of thing. That's another thing people do. They drown their sorrows, they feed their pain, they buy, they purchase, right? And it's not just women, by the way, because I know a lot of men that will get all the gadgets, right? They like all the gadgets. But this is the thing, you're in that space, and you're maybe the song that you guys knew, that was your song, or there's a TV show that comes on that you guys, you binge watched it together for the first time and talked all about it. You spoke about, your favorite character and all. That was a bonding moment, that was a bonding thing. And now, you see the show come on and you reflect back, you remember about when you watched it. I can tell you that the TV show 24, I'm not sure how many of you remember it, was one of my favorites. It was one of my favorites. My ex, distant ex, not this last one, and I watched that series from the beginning all the way through. I started watching it as it was already like maybe in, I might have been in the second or third season, if I'm honest. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, this show is so good." And then we watched it, and I was trying to catch up and trying to figure out, all the things. It's one of those things that if you're seeing a show a few seasons in, you've already missed like relationship building and the connections between the characters. So he's like, "No, no, 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 no. We're gonna go all the way back." So we literally watched that all the way through. And then I remember seeing something about, the movie was going to be made, and that never got made, but the movie was going to be made. And I remember thinking back, man, that was something that we bonded on, that was something that was ours, right? Even though I watched it with my family, it was something that I did with him specifically, and where I caught up and learned all about all the characters and all that with him. So it's a very easy way to go back in your mind. But the thing is, texting him like, all the things, and like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Random, because there are sometimes that we're so connected to someone that we will take the crumbs that they might give us. So yes, he may respond, "Hey," back, and that's it. And then you're thinking, "That's an opening. That's my opening. I'm getting back in there." No, ma'am. That was not meant to be your opening. It might have been him just being kind. The other thing is, don't ask questions that you don't want the answer to. Same ex, right? I remember I remember I was missing him a lot. Again, I was in a relationship with him for longer than I was with my most recent ex. I was in a relationship with him for nearly 6 years. Um, so with that situation, I remember, asking him one of the times that I, reached out. I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" Shooting the breeze, small things. And then I said to him, "Hey, do you miss me at all?" Right? Y'all, I feel like in my head, I just knew he was gonna say like the polite thing and just be like, "Yeah, of course, we have years of history and da da da." Da." He was like, "Well, Stacy, people leave. It's what people do. So, I just handled it. That's it." I was not expecting that, y'all. This is this is a pure example of my ego was like, "Ooh," right? I felt I felt like I got shanked by my ego right there with his words, right? Why? Because I just expected him to be like, "Yeah, Stacy, of course. I mean, you're a great woman, da 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 da." I was expecting all the things, and none of those things took place. He was very matter of fact, very like, "Hey, it is what it is." Now, I will also own the fact that I ended that relationship, but I ended it because it was on life support. There was zero communication. He was not reaching out anymore. I was trying and trying and trying, and there was nothing happening on his end. And I was like, so we're just basically in a relationship on paper at this point. So this is not, it's actually, it was hurting me because I was trying all the things. I was trying to be there for him. I was trying to give him time. I was trying to give him energy. I was trying, y'all. And when you're in a relationship, ma'ams and sirs, there's a problem if you're the only one trying. Two people participate in a relationship of any kind, friendship or dating or marriage. So if there's one party checked out, Houston, we have a problem, right? And so Stacy indeed had a problem. And so I made the choice that I did. It was a tough choice, but I knew that I needed to do that in order to move forward, because nothing was moving forward. Nothing was moving forward. So um, I texted him, like I said, and then I stopped texting him. Fast forward, he ended up calling me. Um, and I told y'all, I pretended like I didn't know who he was. when he called me. I know exactly who he was. First of all, I don't delete people's names from my phone, right? Just in case I don't want to answer, but I still want to know who's reaching out to me. So I knew when I saw his number come in, and I knew what his phone number was. I mean, I called it for 6 years, so I knew what his number was. So he called, and I was like, when he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was like, "Hi, who is this?" I knew who it was, y'all. I was just being petty. And then he was like, "You don't know who this is?" Blah blah blah. Says his name. Great, right? And then he's just like doing small talk, and I'm like, "What is he calling me for?" In my head, right? So I said, "Hey, is something wrong? Because you're calling me. Like, what's going on?" Long and short of it, he ended up telling me he was getting married. And then he told me all the details. He was getting married, such and such a date, such and such a time, da 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 da. And I was like, I don't know if you're expecting a Dwayne Wayne interruption of your wedding, but sir, you chose what you chose. Be blessed. Now it broke my heart. I was 100% hurt, y'all. I know that he told me all those details because I mean he told me time, place, exact location, where in the space they were going to be because it was like one of those big halls that has multiple venues or multiple areas. The particular area he was getting married in is like a very iconic area where there's a huge chandelier in the middle and all that. So he wanted to make sure I knew where it was going to be just in case. And I was like, well, that's great. Congratulations to you. And I don't even know if I said congratulations, if I'm being honest. I was just like, okay, thank you for letting me know. And then I was like, all right, have a great rest of your day. We got off the phone, blah, 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 blah. Fast forward again. Mind you, at this point, I don't have any contact with him. I stopped talking. I was not going to pick up the phone. Even if he called, I was done. Fast forward some years later. Now he's married. I see the number and I'm like, what in the world is he calling me for? Right? I don't pick up the phone. He calls again. I didn't pick up again. He calls again. So now I'm like, maybe somebody in my mind, maybe somebody that we know as a shared person, something happened to them. So I'm like, okay, let me pick up the phone. But I had to literally make my mind okay with this conversation. So I was like, hey, what's going on? And he was like, no, I said hello. Because again, I want to say like I didn't know who he was. Again, I still know who he was, y'all. And he was like, hey, you know who it is? And I was like, no, who is this? He said his name again. He knew I was being petty, y'all. I mean, come on, at this point. And I was like, hey, did something happen to someone? And he's like, well, kind of. And I was like, okay, kind of what? Like, what happened? Is somebody that we know? He's like, yeah. And he's like, let me send you, I'm going to send you a text, a picture. So he proceeds to send me these pictures. And I was like, why is he sending me these pictures of some dude with dreads? I don't even understand what's going on. Long and short of it is that, you know, he was having some situations in his union and he wanted to send me stuff, right? Y'all, the reality of it is I could have easily been like brought back into the whole thing. And, you know, why? Because my heart is a big heart. And when you've separated, there's sometimes God will have you separate for a very intentional reason. And we have to be mindful of when God has separated us to not leave some doors open. Now, I'm not going to say there are some people that I dated back in the day and I'm still cool with them because there's no bad blood. There was no intention that I was going to get married to the people that I dated for a short period of time. And it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work, right? But there are some people that based on your connection that when you separate, you need to stay separate, right? God is literally like, okay, that was that season. You did your thing, but it was not meant for this to carry on. That was, and I've said this to you guys before, that was a rocket booster for you. They propelled you. Whatever it was they pushed you toward is what they were meant to do, and that's it. So you don't need to y'all, let me get a sip of tea. Oh, that's good. That is good, y'all. I'm telling you, get that tea if you don't know anything about it. But there's not always a need to reopen a connection that God has shut. And that's not, I think sometimes people will say, well, you know, as a good Christian, then this, and this. I'm not saying you can't be pleasant. right? I'm not saying if somebody speaks to you, you don't have to be like, "Rrr," like in your response, right? I'm not saying that. But there's also no need to be like, hey, you want to hang out? You want to go to dinner? You want to, like, you don't need to do all that. Showing the truth and love does not mean opening a door to getting your heart stomped again. Because, I mean, let me be honest. When he called and was like, oh, I have a daughter and this and that and the other thing, I literally felt that, like, I felt that in my heart. I felt that in my chest, and I was like, ooh, that stings, right? That stings. Because again, these are conversations that we had prior. So the reason why I feel like it's a don't to, having those texts or, sending them texts, even if it's not a drunk text, even if it's not a text that you've, overindulged in ice cream or you've spent too much and now you're thinking about them or whatever it is, right? Be cognizant of why. Like, look at yourself in that moment and say, why do I want to reach out to this person? What is going on inside of me that I feel I need to hear from this person? I want to talk to this person. I miss this person. Whatever it is, what is going on inside of you in the moment that is making you want to have that type of conversation? Because the conversation could go well in that maybe you get an apology that maybe you wanted, but it could also go to a point where they discount that they ever did anything wrong to you. And if that is the result, are you going to be able to process that? Are you going to be able to handle that? Or is that going to break your heart further? Right? Those are the questions that sometimes we don't ask ourselves in honesty. We're like, it won't affect me one way or another. I don't care. And then you talk to them or you hear from them or you hear a voicemail and immediately you have a feeling about it. Right? So those are one of the reasons why you don't want to just kind of get back into the, let me just text. I'm just going to send a quick text. I was sending my texts initially were happy birthday texts, right? And we actually, even after we ended our relationship for years, I would get every single birthday, I would get a happy birthday text. Until one year they just stopped coming. I don't remember the year, y'all. I wasn't counting like that, but their 1 year they just stopped coming. So just be cognizant of that. Are you trying to hold on? Are you trying to hold out hope and sometimes not having that honest conversation with yourself about that being what you're really doing? Because people are like, no, I don't care about what so and so's doing, but do you not really care for real? Or are you lying to yourselves? Because we can lie to ourselves really well. The next thing that they said don't do is do not make drastic changes. People were like, you know what? That's it. This relationship is over. I'm cutting my hair all off. I can't tell you how many women I've seen go bald or do a big chop or, dye their hair platinum blonde or whatever it is because they just like, I just need a fresh change. And then they look at it and they're like, ugh, why did I do this? Then they got to get their hair braided up or put on a wig until their hair grows back out. And again, I'm a woman, so I can't speak to if men do something drastic, but I haven't heard, and I have a relationship with a fair amount of guys, and I haven't heard of them doing something drastic like that when their relationships are over. So I do think that it's more of a women trying to shed the relationship. Every once in a while I hear about a guy, cutting his locks off because he's had locks for a long time or cutting them shorter, but that's very rare. Women I hear about doing that all the time. Or they'll be like, you know what, I need a new change of scenery. There's no men here. I'm moving to a different part of the country. And then they move there and they find, guess what? The same foolishness that they left is the same foolishness that they walked into. People are people everywhere, y'all. They are people everywhere. Initially, when you go to somewhere new, it feels better. Why? Because it's fresh. You don't know anything yet. You're not into the muck and mire of it all. You're not into the people being shady. You're not into the grocery store always running out of your favorite cereal. You're not into any of that yet until you stay there for a while. And then you're like, oh, this isn't as fun as I thought it was, or this isn't as different. The people aren't as different. There's still people that are talking mess about me over here. These are the other place. At least I knew, where to go around so that I could avoid some of these people here. I don't know the areas, the duck and cover areas as well as I did over there. So that's another common thing that people do. But I also say there are some people that go crazy. They'll like get a tattoo or And I'm not saying tattoos are crazy, but I'm saying they'll get like a big tattoo on their arm all of a sudden, and they were never that type because they're like, I'm just gonna live on the edge. They're like, oh, I'm gonna jump out of an airplane, man. All the things, all the things. I'm gonna be more adventurous. I'm gonna live my life to the fullest. And living your life to the fullest is not a bad thing, but I'm not into plummeting activities, right? So again, if you're doing things just for the sake of trying to, pump yourself up or feel different, think about the why that you're doing the things. Are you doing extreme things because you're in a space where you have to like do something to get your adrenaline pumping? I'm gonna suggest you talk to someone. And I'm not saying you're crazy, but I'm saying that you need to talk to someone to address what's happening inside of you. The next thing is isolating yourself. So this is another don't isolate yourself. Now, in my healing journey, I've talked very clearly about the fact that God will isolate you for a period of time. That period of time is very important because that period of time, what it does is it allows for you to hear from him directly. That period of time is like you cannot get healed without that. I'm being very clear. The healing journey needs that. Why? Because there's so many people that have so many opinions. And if you're listening to all the people and all their opinions, and well, when I went through this, this is what I did. And that's great and that's cool. And I'm not saying nothing about it applies, but there's so much that will attach itself to your thoughts that soon, because you're already in a vulnerable mental, emotional, spiritual state, soon you're adapting to all these things other people are saying instead of having your own process, instead of having you connect with God and hear what he is telling you to do in order to walk through your process. I really truly believe that if I was listening to all the other people as I was going through the initial stages of this, and I was actually really quiet about the initial stages about it. Very few people knew at all that the initial stages were the initial stages. And that was intentional because I know that people would care, but I also know people would be ticked off and be ready to like ride, right? And I needed in that moment to sit in calm because everything in me felt like a whirlwind, right? Everything in me felt emotionally violent, right? Everything in me felt like that. Like I had this disturbance in me. And it was weird because I had that and a calm. So it was like the calm was holding onto that emotional feeling that I was and I think honestly this was God's plan to say, okay, I'm gonna let you have those feelings that you're feeling, those feelings that are very over the top, those feelings that are very deep and deep rooted and painful and all those things, right? I'm going to let you have those, but I'm going to hold on to that as you're experiencing it. Because I feel like if he had let that go and that would have let me go, that would have been bad for all parties involved. For all parties involved. So God was like, I'm going to let you experience this because that's important. Because that's the mourning process, but I'm not going to let you go buck wild crazy because I also have that potential, y'all. That potential does live inside of Stacy. So it was like, okay, let you do this over here, but I'm going to hold on to you. But it was also important for me to know he was actually holding on to me because I felt very abandoned. I felt very lost. I felt very confused. So it was very important for him to be like, yeah, I got you. I know that this period is very painful for you. I know that you're going to have a lot of questions, and I had tons and tons of questions. I know that you feel let down. I know that you feel abandoned. I know all the things that you're experiencing, but I need you to sit in this period with just you and me. That period of time was very, very important because it was him guiding me through a season where I was very angry, very hurt, very confused, very I felt humiliated. I've said this to you all before. Felt very humiliated. Like, wow, how is this happening to me at this time? How is this, what I'm managing? How is this real? Like, how is this real? And for him to be able to sit there with me as I managed it, as I cried, as I screamed, and as I screamed at him. I'm being honest, I screamed at him too. I was like, you know what? God, this is not something that I had envisioned. I had not made time or space or room for this to be my truth at all. I didn't see it coming. It wasn't something I was like, oh yeah, maybe something funky could happen, or maybe I'll be betrayed, or maybe this person would cheat, or maybe this person would, have a whole nother side situation over here. I never, let me be abundantly clear, never thought that at all. But the reality was the reality, right? So when you isolate yourself, what happens is the devil has the opportunity to get in your head. And that's a reason why a lot of people, have a hard time sitting in silence, because when you're sitting in silence, sometimes you're not sitting in silence. You're sitting in silence with your thoughts and the devil's thoughts, because remember, he is the prince of the power of the air. So he has the ability to take your thought, take anything that's said and distort it by the time it gets to you or somebody else. So that's why you may have had conversations with someone, even in this relationship that you might have been in, right? Your friendship or your romantic relationship. And as you navigated that, you're like, I didn't say that to him. Why does he think that I said that? I never said that. I never felt that. That was never something that came out of my mouth. Because when it came out of your mouth, the enemy decided he wanted to cause conflict. And so when it leaves your mouth, that he adds tone to it. He adds a lot of innuendo, a lot of these things that when you said it, you said it out of a pure heart or out of conversation. But what happened is now it's entirely something different. It became something entirely different. Okay. You okay? You good? All right. Y'all, this is live, right? And so sometimes you got to check on folk. I want to make sure people are good. I'm not just going to keep talking. All right. So the other thing that I want to share is this, right? The next thing that's really important, and I have to express that it's important, because sometimes you are in a situation where you want so badly to fill the gap of hurt that's in your heart, right? You so badly want to fill this feeling of pain or this moment of pain. And what you decide that you're going to do is you're going to jump into what is known as a rebound relationship. Y'all, a rebound relationship is not fair to anyone involved. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to the other person. And it's not fair to any person that is connected to y'all, right? Because they buy into the relationship. They buy into the ability for you to do whatever it is that you want to do. They buy into the fact that you might be the power couple, or you might be the it couple. Or if this is about friends, they buy into the fact that your friendship is like you guys are the three musketeers, and now all of a sudden one of the musketeers is not in the musketeering anymore, right? So it's important that people recognize that even in that season, that you need to still make choices that are not going to endanger future seasons. And it's really easy when you're feeling lonely to want to fill that with connection, right? I talk all the time about the first connection, which was Adam and Eve. And God intended for Adam to be on this earth and to be over all the things of the earth, right? And then he was like, you know what? It's not good that man is alone. It's not good. So let me bring community to him, right? I'm going to make community out of his rib, right? I'm going to build community. Now God could have done it anyway. He chose to do it that way, for there to be the most intimate of connection, right? So in that's how, but God didn't need numbers. He could have just been like, okay, let me sprinkle a whole bunch of other men on there. They can all live together in community and take care of the animals and live off the land and play sports and run around and grunt and scratch, right? He could have done it that way, but that's not the way that God intended it, right? So community is an inevitable thing. It is something that God has ordained. The fact of the matter is, we're not to try to fill a void that's in us with another person. It's very similar to when people talk about, when they get in a relationship, they're like, oh, this person completes me. Ma'am and sir, you need to be complete before. It's not to say that you're not working on something. It's not to say you're not healing in an area. All those things may be true. But the fact of the matter is, you may need to sit in a space and do your work before you get involved with somebody else. Because my intention when I went through this and started this, not just the sipping tea, but when I started my healing journey, was to not bruise other people as I navigated my life. Because it's really easy to be a person that bruises because you've been bruised, right? Other people have bruised you, and let me bruise other people, right? Because that's just life, and things happen, and people need to just understand that things happen. Yes, but as a whole adult that has a mind and has the conscious ability to not want to hurt people as I live my life, I also have the ability to make choices that are smarter. I have the ability to make choices that are not selfish, right? And so making those choices or making those decisions, I can say, you know what? I don't want to drag somebody else into my hurt season. It would have been easy, y'all. Every time you break up with somebody or end a friendship, somebody's in your face. Hey, Stacy, you're such a good woman. You didn't deserve to go out like that. And now all of a sudden they see how great of a woman I was and this and that and the other thing, right? Why? Because the enemy wants me to be distracted. Because if I'm distracted and if somebody's taking my attention and filling my ego with all the things that I need to hear, I'm not healing. I'm not paying attention to patterns of behavior that I'm involved in, right? That I need to fix, that I need to regulate. So those are important areas for me to then work through. So that's the next thing. Do not just isolate yourself completely, because the enemy is looking for you to be out in that space where he can take full advantage of you in that moment. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about is not cyber stalking your ex. I tell people this all the time, y'all. I could have been wholly in like some situation where I, could find out where everybody is, what everybody does, all the information, y'all. All of the information if I wanted to. Just give me enough time and just let me loose. Right? But the problem is, you're looking at pictures of your friend and their new friends. You're looking at pictures of them going out together, and now maybe they're going to your favorite restaurant. And you're like, oh, that was our thing. Maybe they're dressing alike and that was something you all did. Maybe they're going on vacation together and that was something that was the connection between you and your friend. And now this person is going about their life, living a whole life, spending time with somebody, doing all the things that were you and this person's special bonding. And it hurts, right? It hurts. You're like, man, this was our thing. This is something that we did together. And now they're just doing this with anybody, right? I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that that doesn't give you the little, like, ooh, okay, well, okay, cool. Well, go about your thing. And it's not that you begrudge somebody moving forward. It's not that you begrudge somebody having a life. It's that you miss that was something that was personal or felt personal between you and this person. And now it feels like nothing about your union, your friendship, your relationship was special, right? It wasn't that it was just something that you and that person did. It's now something that that person and anyone can do. So you're looking at this, trying to figure out what's going on in their life, or like in your mind, you can make all the reasons like, oh no, I'm just trying to catch up and see, how are they doing? Let me just go look. So I'm going to tell you this, and this is about not the most recent, the same ex I was just speaking about from my 20s into my 30s. That's when we dated. But that person, because I was so connected to them, when the disconnection happened, I was on this page every day. What is he doing? What is he up to? What is, this, that, and the other thing? And then I would sometimes go to our friends and try to cross reference. He's going to her house. Oh, that's cool. Like, y'all, I was doing a lot. Why? Simply put, I missed him. I missed him. I missed being a part of his life. I missed the connection that we had. I missed the fun that we had together. I missed the way that I was able to confide in him. I missed the way I was able to talk to him. I missed that I felt like he got me like nobody else got me. Right? I miss those things. And when you miss those things, you seek to figure out what it is that this person is doing, saying, whatever, that you no longer have access to, that you're no longer being able to take advantage of. And so for me, I was like looking at all the things constantly. Y'all, that is the biggest waste of your energy. It truly is. You're spending all this time trying to figure out how someone's doing. If they're thinking of you, what are they up to? They're going about their life. And it's not to say that they don't think about you. They may be doing the same thing on your page, right? And I've actually seen, I remember at one point, I'm like, oh, slipped up because I saw that you added a like to one of my pictures. So I know now you're looking at my stuff, right? And of course, that stroked my ego and it could have had me spiraling back into the same thing. But I was like, no, like, what is the point? What is the point of this? Y'all, healing is a funny, funny journey. It is a funny, funny space to enter in. But the things that you have to do is work on you. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what these people are doing, but we also do know that we want to live a life. We also do know that we want to be happy. We also do know that we deserve to be happy. We also do know that life did not end when our relationship or disconnection, the separation took place. We're still here, which means God still desires for us to be here, which means we still have a life to live. We still have love to share with other people. Yes, does it hurt? Yes, is it sometimes shocking? Yes, does it is it painful when you see that person living in a situation that you thought was going to be you and that person? Absolutely. And I'd be lying to say that that's not the case. For me it is anyways. For me it's definitely been painful when I see that as a thing. When I saw my ex with a picture and he had proposed to this woman, y'all don't think that like beat me up in the stomach and in my head and in my heart? Man, I felt like there was an internal boxing match in my body. But what was I supposed to do about it? It didn't change the truth of what it was. The truth is that he had proposed to someone else and didn't seem to feel free to let me know that we were no longer in a relationship. That was never the case. I never knew that. And somebody can say all the things and, well, we were having difficulties and this and that, and we had a conversation about, and I'm like, and our conversation was about what we needed to do to make our relationship so we could do what we said we were going to do. That was the conversation. So yes, you can then say, yes, we had that conversation, but at no point are you making our relationship better if you're proposing to someone. Like, that doesn't work. That does not work. That is not truth. The truth is the truth, period. Point blank. But the fact of the truth does not change the fact of where we are right now. What the current state of my experience is right now is that I'm not with that person anymore. So yes, could I cyber stalk? Well, if I wasn't blocked everywhere, could I cyber stalk? Of course. But what would that do exactly for me? It's not going to change the truth or the facts of the reality we're in right now. It wouldn't change anything. The hurt was already given, right? I still already have that. It doesn't change that. What it can make you do is make you crazy, because now you're like, oh, so you're just going about your life and da 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 da, and you still owe me such and such, and like all the things, right? So now you're just looking at stuff, just being angry, right? And they're just going about their day, not thinking anything about you. So that's the reason why these don'ts, because at some point, if you're never able to let go of a friend, like you're looking at this friend and you're like, oh wow, you guys are going out to dinner, but didn't you owe me $150? But you're going to Ruth Chris. Okay, cool, good for you. And then then you start to try to, maybe Stacy, maybe they got a gift card for Christmas. Maybe that's what it is, because I know they wouldn't disregard the fact that they owe me money and be doing all the things, right? You see how it can start to make you angry and feel crazy, and then it can make you spiral if you're not careful. That's why you don't want to be doing things like that, where you're spending so much time and energy and effort in areas that don't allow for you to get to freedom, that don't allow for you to get to mental wholeness, that don't allow your spirit to feel settled and have peace in your mind. And that's why it's really important to mourn the loss, however it came to be. Mourn it as it is, because the loss is the loss. The person is not in your life. And it doesn't mean, and this is another thing, somebody said to me, well, Stacy, what if at some point, we do have a relationship? Okay, cool. Then you do. Maybe the season that you're in is a separation and not a disconnection entirely. Right? I don't know that. I have no idea. So maybe that is the season for you. Not for me. I'm saying for y'all, right? So that season may be something that you revisit in the future, and you revisit, hey, this is what happened in this relationship, and you have an honest conversation about feeling hurt, and you have an honest conversation about the fact that some of the things they did were disrespectful, and you have an honest conversation about where things went wrong and your part, and you take accountability for your part. All of those things may be true. But the fact of the matter remains that right now, the season that you're in right now, the disconnection or separation right now is right now. And so you need to apply right now logic to things that are happening right now. You can't apply all the other things, because what happens is then instead of dealing with what you're experiencing right now, you apply dreaming to it. Maybe he'll come around and see the error of his ways. Maybe she'll be a better friend in the future. Maybe he'll be a better friend in the future, and he'll apologize for, treating me da 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 da, right? Now you're applying a dream to something that we don't know will ever happen. And again, I'm not saying it will never happen, but that's not the current state of where you're living. Right now, what you need to do is say, God, I'm in a season of hurt. I'm in a season of disconnection or separation, and I cannot manage this by myself. Me trying to manage it by myself is me trying to manage it by, and that's not good, y'all. I tell y'all the truth. For me, trying to manage something like that on my own is not a good look. It is not a good look at all. Why? Because it implies that I will be able to have reasonable conversations, make reasonable choices and reasonable decisions. And when I'm angry, I don't always make reasonable accommodations in my mind. I don't apply grace, right? Because I'm like, no, I don't got no space for grace right now. I'm angry. And that's all that's taking up all the air and the oxygen and my thoughts. So that's why for me, when people say, oh, I'm on this healing journey, I'm like, how involved is God in this healing journey for you? And I get that not everybody believes, which is a whole nother story for another day. And I pray that God, exposes himself to you. I pray that you learn who he is so that you can manage. But for me, I could never manage this healing journey without him. I couldn't do it, because all the negative things that are in here, I've definitely done these. I've definitely, texted my ex when I should have just let it go. I've definitely made drastic changes, mostly to how I conducted myself. And then I cut off everybody. Like nobody was getting access, zero access. And that was not how I generally was before that. I started dating randomly after one of these relationships was over, because I was trying to fill my time, my energy, how badly I was feeling. I would say that for me, the disconnection immediately made me feel unattractive, right? And so I was like, I wanted people to be like, oh, you're pretty, you're pretty, you're pretty. All the things that were vain and not necessary. And probably for some people just feeling, because they were, let me see what I can get from this person in this moment if I tell her all the things she wants to hear, right? And that's how the enemy functions as well. Cyber, I already told y'all I was all of his social media. All of his social media. Even his Black Planet, y'all, bringing it back all the way to Black Planet, all in it. That's a very real thing. And so I think that for me, this book, very helpful, How to Heal Your Broken Heart. And again, it's by Sylvia Connor, and it's a woman's guide to thriving after a breakup. It has lots of really great sections. I've looked into it. It talks about depression and anxiety. It talks about rest, getting real rest, physical rest and mental, emotional rest. And I'm always going to add spiritual rest into that. So it talks about all of those things as well. So hopefully this was helpful to you all about really some things you should avoid. And again, apply every single thing that I said to all types of relationships. Even if it's an employment relationship, maybe you started a business with somebody and you're no longer cool, or you worked in an organization and the way that the disconnection happened was not good. It was not healthy. It was not respectful. And, you may need to disconnect from some people, and that's okay. Disconnection is a part of life, y'all. It's really about you healing. See how to heal? That's the main word. How do you heal? What work and what effort are you putting into you to being whole? All right, y'all. So that is it for today. I appreciate you being here on this episode 12, season 2 of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. I will be back next week with another episode. Have a blessed rest of your week. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others, and extend to yourself first. And to me, your girl, a measure of grace. I'll see y'all. Bye.